All right, Boker Tov. Lilu Nishmat, Avigdor Chayavra, Ben, Meir Tzvi Rachel Leah. Forgot to say it last week, so this was for last week's as well. We are on page 140, late in chapter 22, starting with the words Hachelek Hasheni. Let's get it up here. Okay, we talked about the idea, we're still discussing the idea, and hopefully finish that up today, the topic of anava, or humility. And we're talking about that when it came to the actions the person takes, that there were a few different areas in which a person can exhibit anava, or humility. We talked about the way a person speaks. We talked already about the way how a person sits and with whom and among which group, and the idea it's better always to be told to move up than to move down. And now we're going to talk about the next subcategory, and that has to do with Svilata el Bonot. Let me explain to you what this means. I went looking for, when I heard it, it was an actual cassette tape, but you know what I'm talking about. I have a shir from Rabbi Yisrael Reisman Shlita that he gave at least 25 years ago that I heard, 25 years ago, which was magnificent on this very topic. And I went looking for it, can't find it. I'm sure, I know it's out there. And basically, he was talking about what happens when a person is insulted, or as he used the expression, ranked out, ranked down. I don't remember what he said. This is by Reisman. And when you get yelled at, what's that?
My daughter-in-law's parents, rabbi.
A tzaddik, a gaon, a brilliant individual, and a very big anav himself. Just as a parenthetical parenthesis as to who this man is, I'll just tell you very briefly for those who don't know. Many years ago, I don't know if it's 35 years ago, he and a number of other gentlemen would bring their sons on Motzei Shabbat to a Beit Midrash to learn Mishnah. Beis Medrash to learn Mishnayos. Sorry, he never walked into a Beit Midrash. He walked to Beis Medrash. And while they were there, the sons were learning Mishnayos with the Rebbe, and the guys, the parents, the fathers who brought them, were sitting in the Beis Medrash, in the other part of the Beis Medrash. And he said, "Inkvar, we're sitting here. Let's just learn something." So they asked Rabbi Reisman to give a little shir once a week. He started to give a little shir Navi, which became the world's largest shir. It means that they're from Sukkot until Pesach, in person and online. He has thousands of people who listen live. It's not just a shir and Navi. Every class has hashkafa, has philosophical things, has halacha issues, and it is magnificent. I listened for a number of years. I haven't had a chance in a long time. It's not true. I haven't listened in a long time. I have a chance. I haven't done it. And this one shir he gave had to do with this particular paragraph of Svilat el Bonot. When a person is insulted by another individual, our automatic response is to have our guard up and to want to pounce and to want to say something back and to respond. And he has this story about a man who came home and his boss was just yelling at him and tearing him up, and now he just took it. And he gave, and I don't remember the source, I'm just mentioning this, but just there is a source of this, that the more a person absorbs, I'm going to talk about being, responsible for your own kavod as well in a minute, but the more a person listens to an insult and is able to say, you know what, I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to overlook it. The person is whatever they are, and I'm just going to deal with it. Then Hashem, I'm going to see here in the text as well, will overlook things that we do to Hashem. And it also increases one's place, or whatever the word is, in Olam Haba. It's like it acts as a tremendous potion for the next world to come, for the world to come. He gave this whole story and the whole background. That's why I went looking for it, because hearing in my 2-minute babbling about it, as opposed to hearing his 10-15 minute story and explanation, it would have been much better. If I can find it, I will send it out. Bezrat Hashem. So in order to be, why is this considered, even before we look at the paragraph, why is this considered anava? To be humble. If someone says to you, I always choose Mark, so I'm going to use you again, Mark, because it's fun, right? It's fun. Imagine you just finished doing a party, and I can always look, Mark, come on, the food stunk. It was lousy. It was, and I'll tell you, the truth is, look, the food was fine. Service was lousy. Can you smile once in a while, right? And I start to insult you and your product, and it's just it's terrible. Now, of course, your instinct would be to say, who are you? Or whatever you might say back. Taking, I've been insulted by more, worse people than you, right? But when you take it and you don't give it back, you may be hurt. It doesn't say don't be hurt, but you don't start giving it back. You say, "What are you idiot? You try and make something to please 100 people." Well, one phone call, yes, it's all on the phone, or an anonymous text. It does something to you, into your neshama. Let's take a look. Okay, we're starting with the words achelak hasheni. Achelak hasheni hu svilat elbonot. A person receives, they bear insults. They take it. Again, let's back up for a second. You don't have to take it to heart. You shouldn't take it to heart. If someone criticizes an individual and it's legitimate, you should take it to heart. Depends, obviously, it should be given the right way. But there's nothing, when you have a relationship with somebody that you properly can say something to that individual and say, this, look, you may not be aware, but, and you do it the right way, okay. But when someone comes, literally insulting you and saying things that are very negative, doesn't mean you should take it to heart. And for sure, should not, and it's easy to say, but you should not allow it to get to you to the point where you want to do something in return. Listen. The second category is bearing insults. They said clearly, to whom does Hashem overlook sin? Literally means bear the sin. What does it mean? That God takes it away. To one, meaning an individual, who is the recipient of not an insult, transgression. What does that mean? No one has the right to insult another individual. You do have the right, and we've spoken about this, in the proper way to tell somebody something that maybe they need some adjustment, they need some correction, and again, only people are going to listen to you, and only in a nice way, and only, all these other onlys. No one has the right to come up and say, "You stupid idiot! How could you have done something like that?" Like, hey, shit, no problem. Have a nice day. And I've been on the recipient side. I'm sure we all have at some point of some of those over the years. Thankfully, not too much, but enough. And of course, it hurts. But then you also have to consider the source. A person who has the gall, the temerity, the chutzpah to come at you like that, even if they're justified, okay, it's their problem, not yours. And it's very easy to say, very hard to put into practice. Well, what does it do for you? It enables Hashem. Now, I've told you before, I think, in this context here, when I go looking for my etrog, so let's say there's 25, 30 on the table. Within a matter of 30 seconds, I have my etrog. And I know there are people spend hour, half hour, 2 minutes, I've got it. So I was with someone there was somebody who was near me when I was taking it out. And they said, "Do you mind if and they asked very respectfully, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" Sure, go ahead. I get that a lot. I noticed that you kind of picked out the etrog very quickly. Had you already been here and looked them over? I said, no. So how did you pick one out in 2 minutes? I said, well, first, I know the basic requirements I'm looking for. Number two, I have this theory that we just finished Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because it's usually right after that we're picking out this. And our judgment's still hanging in the balance until Hoshana Rabbah. I figure if I don't look too closely at the flaws, maybe Hashem won't look so closely at my flaws. It's a theory. There's nothing to base it on whatsoever. Okay? But he asked in a very nice way, instead of like saying, some rabbi. So, and I've heard that. It's okay. Furthermore, they said, people who are insulted and don't insult in return. People hear their degradation and don't respond. The pasuk says about them, that his beloved are like the sun coming out in its strength. What does that mean? It's a metaphor. The idea that when you sit out here in the morning, you look out at about 5:20 in the morning. For those of you who just went, yeah, right, not 5:20, and at this time of year, and you look over in the mountains and you see the sun just peeking over, which I have said, if you ever watch sunrise, it is mamash like a baby's head crowning. Literally the birth of a new day. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I've had the opportunity many, many, many times over the years to see sunrise here, not in Chicago, but here I see it. And it's like this power that you can actually see God working in bringing this new day. I mean, it's not actually rising. We know it's the earth, the way it's turning out, but fine. But it's saying is that kind of idea. And we see this from the story of the greatness of his humility from Bava Ben Buta. And I need to take up my phone because it only quotes part of the Gemara here. So I put it into my phone. And it's a very very strange Gemara. And we're going to see, and I already tell you in advance, some of the things we're going to read today, are you going to look at me and go like, what? Just don't insult me. Or insult me and I'll just take it. Okay, let me get this on the phone. One moment, please. Here, my own group. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. My own group, here. Okay, you have part of the text here, so just you could look along, but you're going to see a lot of chule, which means etc. Okay, let me get it to the beginning. Fine. Understand that if I were to say a word to you, you are all originally from the United States, correct? Okay, so if I were to say a word to you, a hob, H-O-B, you know what that is? You do. Okay, you know. Anybody else know what it is? So I got a call a number of, okay, I got a call a number of years ago from somebody in the neighborhood asking me how to kosher their hob. And I said, I don't know, because I don't know what a hob is. It's a stovetop. It's a stovetop. I had no idea, right? Yeah, because they learned, whatever, I'll leave my, yeah, that's the hob. I didn't know that. Okay, that's fine. Ask the average American what a nappy is, right? Or a serviette. Huh? What you talking about? Right. A lift. Okay. We are, as I think Churchill said, we are two people separated by a common language.
Yeah, it's a flat metal shelf at the side or back of the fireplace, having its surface level with the top of the grate.
Interesting.
He lays empty cups down
on the hob. So it has multiple meanings then, because that it moved it to be that I was explaining, it was explained to me that's the stovetop. But what's my point here? That we have words that we use in English that will be unintelligible to other people necessarily because they have a different meaning to the word or don't have that word in that particular language. When you talk, I will not use that, certain words that have a definite negative connotation in one English way of saying it, and the British English is going to be a completely different benign type of meaning. So this Gemara is based on the idea that people, while as they spoke Hebrew, they had different, or Aramaic, they had different terminology and different accent and all. So take a look at this. Again, part of this in your text, most of it is not. There was a person who lived in Bavel who went to Israel. Nasev Itata, he got married to a woman. Baruch Hashem was a woman. Amarle, he said to her, and also you have to overlook the sexist aspect of the Gemara. Bashilali trade talfe. He asked her to cook her 2 lentils. 2 lentils. Bashila le trade talfe, and when she cooked him 2 lentils. And what is it she actually cooked for him? It was 2 cow's feet. It says talfe could mean the lentil, and like tlafaim, which means the hooves. She cooked 2 cow's feet for him instead because she didn't understand. Ratachala. So he got angry at her. Machar, the next day, Amarla, he said to her, Bashila li griva, I want you to cook for me, please, an amount, which is called a se'ah. A se'ah is a measure. Like time, okay, cook me a measure of the lentils, which was a large amount. And she cooked, it says, Bashila griva. And she cooked what she assumed that griva meant was a massive amount, much more than any person could eat. Amarle, he said to her, Zili aitile betre butzini. Bring me 2 butzini, which would be 2 small gourds. Azlat va'aitila tre shrage. Instead, she brought 2 candles. Again, misunderstanding the word. Because shraga, if you're not sure, they didn't know that, shraga, shin, rej, gimel, aleph, is a candle in Aramaic. A flame. 1 second, I went backwards here. Amarla, he said to her, Zili tvari yaton al reshe de bava. He said to her, go and break these candles on the gate. The bava is a gate, like bava kama, bava batra, right? Havayati bava bambuta, a bava. And at that moment, a man named Bava Bambuta was sitting by the bava, by sitting by the gate, the kadayin dina, and he was a judge, and he was working on a case. Azla tutvar tiaton al reshe, and she took the candles and broke them on his head. Amarla, so he said to her, Ma dein davadet, what'd you do? Amarle kach tzivani ba'ali, this is what my husband told me to do. Amar, so he said, At asita tzon ba'alich, you did what your husband asked you to do. Hamakom yotzi mimech shnei banim kevava bembuta. You should have two sons like me. Now, what does that mean? First of all, how does this show anava? Number one is the simple answer is that he didn't say, "What are you doing? Get out of here!" and screaming, yelling. He said, "You listen. You follow what your husband asked you to do. Your spouse asked you to do. Very good." What does it mean? Then now you should have two. For why two children? Why two sons? Because it represented the two candles that she broke over his head. But why does he say it kind of like is a contradiction in terms? On the one hand, he takes the elbow, he takes the insult and doesn't respond. On the other hand, he says, you should have two kids like me. What do you think? She was also modest. Yes. Took a lot of insult from her husband. That's right. By the way, that's a great point because most people focus as he does on Bava Ben Buta and not on her. And it's also showing her modesty. They definitely married counsel and they should quickly. Yes. And Joel, you were saying? A concussion. Very good. So I'm going to mention to you a Gemara. I'm not going to print it. I didn't print it out or anything. Why is it absurd that? So that's right. So there's a commentary. Right. So there's a commentary on the Gemara called the Maharsha. Maharsha discusses and explains things of the Gemara of the halacha part and the midrash or the story part as well, or Agadah, I should say. So he has in when you come across a story like that, number one, is it meant literally? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It could be just a metaphor. We find thousands of times in Bavli, unfortunately not a lot, Shalmi is not a lot of Agadita, but thousands of times in Bavli where you have stories that absolutely not meant to be taken literally. Maybe this is one of them, quite possible. It could be talking to teach us about communication. It could be talking about humility, whatever it might be. So the Maharsha would discuss that kind of a question. So how does this man say, you should have two kids like me? I'm such an anav. And he even brings this man as a concept of an anav. So I'll make the question even stronger. At the end of Masechet Sotah, it says that from the time that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died, there's no longer anava. There's no more person who is an anav. And from the time of the death of, I forgot who it was, there's no more Yirat Shammai or Yirat Chet. So someone says, what do you mean there's no more anava? There's me. So it sounds like, whoa, dude, that's not much of humility, is it? There are many, many answers given to this question. One by someone called the Ben Yehoyada, which is too long for me to explain right now, but I want to give a different spin. There are times you need to say, dugri, clearly what you have to say. If someone actually felt, now this is not the meaning of the Gemara necessarily, this is my perspective. I've not seen this anywhere. If the Gemara actually said that from the time of Yehuda Nasi, there's no more anava, it's all gone, what would it do to people's image of self-interest? Well, why even bother? I might as well be a bit haughty because there's no more anava. Or there's no more yirat chet. Okay, why even bother being yirat shamayim and all? So sometimes someone had to stand up and say, look, I am going to say this. Yeah, I know maybe it's not on Nava to say it, but it has to be said. I'm around. And also what's not in the text. And there's you, and there's you, and there's you. We cannot accept that there's no more Anava. Ben Yehoyada discusses the fact that Rebbe was referring to the fact that he had, that the Gemara was referring to the fact that Rebbe Yudanasi was famously wealthy, very important, very rich, and had the power, tremendous power. And yet it says that he didn't ever take any benefit from this world, even for his up to his pinky in this world. Whatever that means, again, in an allegorical sense, I can't tell you. So sometimes you got to say what has to be said. So Baba Ben Mutan maybe was saying here also, look, it's maybe not the most appropriate thing for me to say at this moment, but what you did is tremendous. I have this position. I don't lord over people. I'm sitting here. I'm a simple judge. I do what I have to do. They should be zochet to at least, if not greater than what I've been able to accomplish in my life. Maybe. But we have another category now that even seems to be a little bit more troubling. Sinat HaRabbanut. I was waiting for Joel's smile on this one. Literally means hatred of the rabbinate, but it doesn't mean that at all. Okay, we know that it says in Pirkei Avot, you should hate. That doesn't mean rabbinate. In this case, rabbanut, as we talk about ribonut, same word, similar, same shoresh. We talk about sovereignty. Rabbanut in this case means authority. Now, it also sounds crazy. Hate authority? That sounds like anarchistic. Sounds like you might maybe get a few 100,000 people, in the streets every Motzei Shabbat in some form of an anarchistic way. I don't know. That's just maybe me. And what does it mean to be averse, to hate authority? Like, imagine you're a teacher in a school, or you're an employee at a company, and some guy, your boss, comes over and tells you something. Go jump in the lake. Who are you? Here's your pink slip. So what does it mean? And why is it a good thing why is this in this chapter about Hanava? Let's take a look. Actually, let's back up a second. Personal story. In 1997, 1998, when the shul in which I was a member, which I grew up, was once again looking for a Rav. You know that I talked about this before, that I put my hat in the ring to become the rabbi of the shul with 11 other candidates. And I made it very clear to the search committee that I was a member of the shul, that if for some reason they didn't vote for me, I'm still a member of the shul. I'll still continue. No hard feelings, because I said clearly that if I were you, I wouldn't vote for me. That's a really good, that's a great strategy, by the way, in politics. If I were you, I wouldn't vote for me. Okay. I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that had Groucho Marx. There you go. I said, why? Because I started with 2 strikes against me. Number one, I have 0 experience in the rabbinate. And number 2, many of you knew me as a little kid. I grew up in the shul from 10 years old. What's that? No, actually, I was not. No, I actually sat in the shul next to my father to daven. Yeah, from a young age. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. And even when it was time to go out, we went downstairs. Probably never heard of this in New York, but they played something called cup baseball. We'd crush a little cup and we'd play baseball, whatever, Shabbat, and eat sugar cubes. Don't ask. Anyways, so I said I read 2 strikes against me. Fine. But before I put my hat in the ring, I had to do a cheshbon hanefesh. Really did. You're talking about a major change in life. I was unknown, meaning most people thought I was an accountant, actually. People thought I was in computers. Most people didn't know what I did. I was in business world and director of purchasing for 17 years, between purchase manager or whatever. 17 years. Most people had no idea what I did. I was an anonymous individual. People knew me. I knew everybody in the community. But then it's very small, smaller than it is today, and not smaller, different. So I had to do a cheshbon hanefesh. And I still have the paper. I wrote a piece of paper with the pros and cons. I shouldn't do that. Oh, that's not good. It's on tape. Great. Yes, the pros and cons. Let's do like this. Pros, cons of what it would be. So among the cons were, because again, I knew the people in the shul, was that I had no experience, that people knew as a kid, that the person that the shul would really want as a rabbi is Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe. They were pussycats. It was a great place. And then on the cons was also something that I don't think maybe once or twice I've mentioned ever in public. One was kavod. That to me was a big con, respect or honor. And the other was family, time with family. Now, what I delineated for myself what I meant. I said, I know personally people who've let kavod, and honor, respect, go to their heads in the rabbinate. That ruins them. More times than I care to count, I've seen it destroy rabbis. Other professions too, but I'm talking about rabbis right now. And the other question for myself was, am I going to have enough time with my family? Because our oldest at that time was 8 or 9 years old, 8. And they're in school and homework and all that. Because I really didn't know what this entailed. But I put down in writing 2 things. If I allow it, I see myself allowing kavod to go to my head, or I don't see myself having enough time with my family, I'm out. I will promise myself, and I did, I put it in writing to myself, that if either one of those things happened, and I'd have to do a good cheshbon hanefesh every once in a while, that I would quit. I would say, this isn't for me. So over the first couple years, I would ask my kids, do you think, not for right away, but after the first couple years, do you think I spend enough time with you? The answer was too much. I always, 90% of the time we ate dinner together. I always tried to, if I had meetings or anything, to try where it wasn't 100%, but tried my best. And I can say to this day, I try my best. It's just like the kavod part. I'm just opening my heart here a little bit. Honestly, it's just like, no, I can't take it. It's very difficult sometimes. So what does this mean here? Usnat rabbanut, and hate authority. So b'kitzur, it means don't let it go to your head. If I'll give you an example, when I was back in the business world, when I was the director of purchasing, if I didn't show up for a day or two, okay, the president of the business doesn't show up for a week, doesn't make that much difference. But the guy in shipping and receiving, the guy who's actually shipping the stuff out the door and receiving the goods in the door for the materials, he's gone for a day, trust me, I was in charge of that. That throws everything for a loop. So it's not a matter of how high you are on the totem pole, can you have a greater long-term effect and affect process and practice? Yeah, of course, the higher up on the food chain. But what does Golda Meir said? Don't be so full of yourself. You don't have what to be so proud of anyways, or something to that effect. I'm misquoting her. So let's take a look here what Ramchal says instead of what Zev Shandro says. Sinat Rabbanut ubrichat hakavod, being averse, having an aversion to authority, and running away from kavod. Mishnah Arukahi. We have in Masechet Avot that tells us, Ahov et hamelacha usnat rabbanut. Love the work and really hate authority. We'll see as he goes through here what it means. Furthermore, they said a person who allows their heart to get haughty and swell up because they are able to give sak halacha, they're able to make decisions. Shoteh, rasha, v'gas ruach. Not bad. He doesn't hold back. He's an idiot. He's a rasha, and he's someone who is haughty. What does it mean? Imagine, I won't use any names. Rabbi X. It's very popular. People come to him all the time for questions. After time, he's written Svarim and just posted, and his shutim, his shelot and shuvot, his responsa have come out. And sitting in his house and saying, dang, I'm good. A lot to think I had. Remember, pride and proud are two different things. He can be proud of what he did. But when he comes to the point of thinking like, I'm the biggest guy out there, right? Ask me anything. Look what happens. It says, we'll see in a minute what happens in that situation. And furthermore, they said, whoever chases after kavod, and I know a number of people who will definitely fall into that or did, hakavod boreach mimenu. Kavod runs away from him. Furthermore, they said, don't try to get rushed to an argument. What does that mean? It means you should not run after positions of authority. Lama? Why? What will you do the next day? In the end, they're going to come and ask you questions. What are you going to answer? What does that mean? Assume for a moment there's a job opening for director of an institution. And I say, I think I could do that. And this way I also want to do it because I can show how smart I am and I can have authority over people and I can run a department or maybe an entire institution. And then I get there on my first day and they ask me, okay, can you do me a favor now? Could you explain the vision of the company and how you do the profit loss statement? And we need that tomorrow. I don't even know what a profit loss P&L statement is, right? All right. So now there's a person who puts themselves into a position of authority. Sometimes when they seek something because it's being an authority position, not because they necessarily feel that they're qualified, not necessarily because they just want to do good, which we're going to talk about, but because they just want a position of authority, comes back to bite them. Furthermore, it says that Rabbi Nachama min Nachama b'shem Rabbi Tanchum, anyone who accepts a position of authority in order to benefit from that position, is no different than an adulterer who just wants to have pleasure from the woman's body. Pretty strong statement. Now, it maybe some of you in a minute immediately thought of the one who seeks out the position of authority in order to benefit from it. Think of politics. Unfortunately, that is true for some. They seek to go into politics for their benefit for long-term gain. Not in Israel. That never happens. Chas v'shalom. But you think it's water. But there are people and I personally know some who have gone into politics to truly try to do the best they can to benefit this country. There's no question. And then there are the others. Od Sham. Furthermore, it says there, Amar Rabbi Abahu said, Ani, meaning Hashem in this case, Nikreti Kadosh. I am called holy. If you don't have the character traits that I have, meaning Rachum, Chanun, Anav, etc., don't accept upon yourself a position of authority. What's this mean? Again, it's a concept of cheshbon nefesh before someone takes a certain position. I'm not saying don't try to be in a position of authority, but I'm saying you have to understand why you want to be in a position of authority. And what it could be all kinds of positions. It could be the head, by the way, it could be a head of a vada or a vad, of a committee. Parenthetical statement. We all have seen and been involved over the years, maybe in various va'adot, various committees. And I did check something. I was right. The word va'ad, vav, ayin dalid, the shorish is ya'ad, yud ayin dalid, which means destination. Because a va'ad without a ya'ad is useless. That's my own, you feel free to quote me on that. They finally came up with something after 64 years. But seeking out position of authority just to be authority, that's the problem. The Talmidei Rabban Gamliel yochichu, and the Talmidim of the students of Rabban Gamliel will prove this point. How? They were in dire straits because they were very poor, and they were given options and opportunities to have positions of authority, which would have paid well. And because they ran away from it, they didn't want the position of authority because that even though they would finally get out of their poverty, they didn't want to be in a position that could compromise their values per se, because they weren't sure they were going into for the proper reason. But before we even continue, he doesn't say this here, but I think it's worth saying. The makom shein ish, right? There's no person who really who is going to step up, and someone has to do something. You have to be the person. You have to step in. You have to try. Don't be the person. This is not just, I'm not saying to you, I'm saying anyone who hears my voice. Don't be the one who sits back and waits for everybody else to do something about it. It's something as simple as you're at a kiddish, you're at somewhere, it's time, people are leaving now, and everyone's walk out, and it just happens to be a community thing that, like, pitch in, throw something out, whatever it might be, or to the point of we need to do something about X in the community, or we need to do something about something in the school or in the business. Okay, yeah, they got to do something. Why should it be they? If there's no one stepping up and you have some abilities, doesn't mean it's going to be all on you. It's not up to you to finish the job, but you're also not patur lehibatel mimena. You're not. It's not okay just to sit back and watch everyone else, just murmur and mumble about it. Step up. That's the flip side of this. Continuing. Parshat Kohen Mashuach is what it says in the Parsha, the Torah, about the anointed Kohen. Zeloshonan, this is what it says in Gemara Hoyot. You think I'm giving you a position of authority? I'm giving you servitude. This is a very good line to understand what srara or authority is about. People think that because they have people who are not in position of authority, think that those who are in position of authority, wow, they got it made, right? They can tell people what to do, and they can make things happen and all. It's a burden. To be in a position of authority is a burden. It's avdut. You are serving the people, right? In theory, the president of the country, let's just say Micronesia. I don't know if they have a president or a prime minister or what it is. I'm just picking Micronesia because they're one of our few friends in the world. What? They don't know either. Really?
Yeah, he was at MCA.
He went to Micronesia? Yes, Palau. Yes.
10th grade at the Zionist club or something. And since Micronesia, as you said,
is a friend of his, always votes for Israel. Yes.
They went on a trip there for a winter vacation.
Wow. That is pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
All right. So imagine the president of Micronesia, the prime minister of Micronesia, is sitting there saying, this is so cool. I get to rule all 16 people of this island. I am really a big shot, right? And then all of a sudden the complaints come in, and then this one has to tell you what to do, and this one has to tell you what to do. And you have taken on yourself. What is it? Again, I think it was Golda Meir who said she has she's all the and everyone else the 3 million presidents and one exactly. So they're always telling her what to do, right? When I began in the shul, so the former Rav, Rabbi Frank, told me, gave me one wonderful piece of advice. He said, as soon as you become the rabbi, everyone's going to tell you what to do. I said, look, I know you're new at this. I want to give you a suggestion. He said, some of them may be good. Some of them are going to go in here and out there. Just nod and smile and thank you very much. And I did. That's exactly what I did. I did get a few good ideas, a few, and then a bunch of like whatever. I had to go in this year, one out the other year. But it's true. It's a position of you are responsible. You are answering to people, and you're going to be the ones that, the buck stops here kind of thing. But it gets even more than that. We'll see the next paragraph in a second if we get to it. It says furthermore in Psachim, woe is to those who are in positions of authority, and we'll just use parenthetically and abuse it and do it for the wrong reason, because it buries those people. What does that mean? It's hard on their life. A person who, in both ways, by the positive and negative, people who take things to heart, if they're in a position of authority and carry that with them, it weighs on them. It has a mental health effect, it has a physical effect on them. And how do we know that? From Yosef. Yosef HaTzadik. He was the first to go for his brothers because he was in a position of authority, and it wasn't just a position of authority. He was responsible for making sure people didn't die from hunger in Mitzrayim, which at that time was the powerhouse of the world. That was the biggest. That was the modern day United States. Well, that's not powerhouse anymore. Modern day China, modern day Micronesia. Yeah, I wonder, is there a Macronesia?
I don't think there is, but it was also left. Just like I remember, but I don't remember what they did. There was an issue because they were crossing the international date.
Yes.
There was an issue of when Shabbat was.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it depends if they're even there on Shabbat.
Right. So there's a bunch of books about that. I actually gave a shiur a few years ago about halacha and the international date line. The question, I've been to Hawaii a few times, and I just chose to just forget about the whole question. Don't ask. I didn't forget it. I made my own decision after doing some research. But there's a whole question about Sfirat HaOmer, question about davening. If you daven shacharit, and now you're your day earlier now, you daven shacharit again. I mean, how does that work? So just as a parenthetical comment, once again, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a Chetzadik B'Kadosh Livracha, paskin for his Hasidim, that when they travel during Sfirat HaOmer, if they're going to go, for example, from the United States to Australia, they have to go the long way around and can't go backwards, because he says not only are you going to mess up Sfira, you're going to end up having to keep Shavuot in a different day. He paskin they actually would keep Shavuot like the day after they do in Australia, because this loss of a day is not a lost day. It still counts somehow, and I don't remember the whole chishuv. Klalo shel davar, the general rule, the summary idea here is, ein harabanut ela masa gadol. Authority is just a heavy burden. That rests the shoulder of the one who carries it. When a person is just anonymous, just another person in the community, he's subsumed among other people. He does something wrong. So he does something wrong. He's just an individual. When a person goes up to a position of authority, he is the one, or she is the one, who gets caught up in the problems and the sins of the people from whom he or she is responsible. Explain that in a minute. Because it's his responsibility to look over and watch over everybody, and to guide them. And he's more here referring to a rabbinic community, a teaching community, because it's their job to see to it that people know the right thing to do and to know what to do, and halacha and hashkafa, to straighten out people V'im lav, if they don't, va'ashamam berashechem. It's the sin is upon them, and that's a play on words because there's va'asimem berosham. It says in the Torah, I'll place leaders, says va'asimem, I will place them, but it means they play on words va'ashamam, and their guilt is on their head. What's going on here? What's this talking? I'm going to close the book here because we're going to stop here at this point, but I want to explain this last thing. You should know Avram's name is in my book many, many, many times. Every time we stop, I have ACA because I know where I left off. I have Shul, I have the initials of people. I use the same book for years. I love it, but ACA, big ones. Okay, what's it mean? You take a person, let's use Rav Ovadia Zatzal as an example. He was in a position, and forget, I'm not talking about Shas, I'm just talking about halachically in day-to-day life. He was in a position of tremendous authority over hundreds of thousands of people. But Ovadia said it, that's the way it is. If there were things that he said wrong, Paskin wrong, which there are things over the years, there's no Rav, there's no doctor, there's no accountant, there's no anybody in any profession that doesn't make mistakes. Of course you make mistakes. It's just how you deal with it. You own up to it and move on and fix it. If you don't, you're a fool, not you. Well, most people. And in addition to that, if Rav Ovadia had seen some problem in a community, in his community, it was his responsibility, by dint of his position, to call it out and make sure that they were on the straight and narrow. And if he didn't, and he was aware of it, unless it was a Tovshi Shogigin value Mizidin, better they should be doing it by accident rather than doing it on purpose and because they're going to do it anyways. He had a responsibility for people to make sure he called them out and said what has to be done. Again, however he was going to do it, was a sharp way or not sharp way, and he did it definitely over his career. But if he didn't, then what they do, and he had the opportunity to straighten it out, he didn't. Part of what they did wrong falls on his shoulders, fell on his shoulders as well. That's a huge responsibility. If I am the president of a company and someone in my company messes up and I'm aware of it and I don't do anything about it, let me give you an example. Let's say I'm the principal of a school and there's a student in the school who's violent and did something to another kid to the point where this kid ends up in the hospital. God forbid. And by the way, it happens. And I'm aware of it and I try to sweep it under the rug, God forbid. Then, or I don't kick the other kid out of school, the first one, or I do something where he's no longer in the school. Then the next time something happens, chas v'shalom, not only was it terrible that I kept the students here and allowed this to happen, it aggravates the whole situation. The parent will say, you knew. I don't understand. You knew this kid was violent. What is he doing in the school? So it's your responsibility, as much as it may hurt, as it may hurt the student, chas v'shalom. And whether you are the principal or whatever position a person may have where there's authority, when you see your own child, as little kids, as adults, you still have the responsibility, but especially when they're young and they're not doing something right, your responsibility is to, and again, in a nice way, we talked about this, to say it the right way. It's your responsibility. And if you know they're doing something wrong and you know they'll fix their ways if you help them see the right way to do it, it's also on you as a parent. So keep that in mind as well. Okay. We have one more topic that we're going to be doing of these four. And then there's going to be a bit of a conclusion. The next chapter will deal with how to do this and actually put these things into practice. Then we have two more topics left, Bezrat Hashem, in the book, Yirat Hachet and Kedusha. Easy peasy. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody.